Hello everyone, I'm going to talk about the constructivism, specifically by Piaget, and how it has impact on language learning. And I'm going to start by defining what is constructivism. It is a learning theory that believes people construct their own knowledge and learners construct it by making connections between prior and new information. Around this trend are many exponents or theories that, in a sense, share almost the same thoughts and principles about constructivism, but that at some point they discern in some aspects. So, in this case, I'm going to focus on Jean Piaget's constructivism. The constructivism was developed because there was a dissatisfaction with the behaviorism, and that ended it in developing an approach that focused more on mental or cognitive processes and not just in observable behavior. And here Jean Piaget is one of the main theorists. He was a Swiss psychologist, a pioneer in the field of child psychology, who wrote important articles and many works around child development and learning. But his most important work is the four stages of cognitive development that I'm going to explain. Piaget taught that there are four main stages in which a child develops and learns through life. Each of these stages is different and is characterized by different traits. With each stage, new and different methodologies are introduced to form and guide the child to the next stages. The first of the stages is called sensorimotor stage, and it goes from birth to 2 years. Here the child uses their senses and initial motor skills to explore and learn from the environment. The object permanence is important to develop here, and object permanence means that a kid needs to understand that things are still existing even if they can see or hear them. A clear example of this is the playing peekaboo, and in this stage they cannot digest or comprehend the idea that there is someone that still exists even if they disappear and then reappears. So that is why they seem to be curious most of the times, and they love when they see that someone is reappearing. Then we go to the pre-operational stage that goes from 2 to 7 years. Here the child starts using logic and language, and here language is very important because that is the way they can communicate and get information and knowledge from the environment. They use symbolic thought to represent things when playing. Symbolic thought is, for example, when a child is using or playing with a broom, and that broom represents or plays as a horse. And in this stage, the child is also unable to understand that there are some other opinions or perspectives, and this is called egocentrism. And Piaget recognized this concept in this stage. Then, in the concrete operational stage that goes from 7 to 11 years, the egocentrism decreases and the concept of conservation develops. So they can finally understand that even when something changes in shape or in appearance, it is still, in a sense, the same thing. And the logical thinking and reasoning is developing in this stage. The final stage is the formal operational stage, and here the individuals are able to think in more logical way and can think in creative solutions for problems. Deductive logic is as well more developed, and they can think in a systematic and abstract way. They are capable of creating theories or hypotheses about things around them, and these theories can develop later in conclusions. The constructivism has had a great impact in teaching and in many classrooms and schools around the world, and there are certain characteristics that characterize a constructivist classroom. For example, learners are really encouraged to think by themselves and construct individually their own learning. By construct individually their own learning, I mean that it's not going to be the same process or a general process for everyone in a classroom, because every learner or person has different backgrounds. They have different lives, they have different beliefs, they have a previous knowledge and previous experiences that shape this process of learning. So they are going to construct their learning individually based on their beliefs and necessities and previous knowledge acquired. This approach presents issues or tasks in the form of a problem to be solved, as the constructivist trend thinks that it is need to be developed a critical thinking. Here, the role of a teacher is not the typical role of a teacher that provides or delivers tons of information. Here, the role of a teacher is a guider or a coach that provides resources to discover and fosters researching by themselves and individually. And but at the same time, they work in teams because a constructivist approach is under the thought that for the effectiveness of learning, it is also necessary a social construction. Learning here is built on previous knowledge, as I said before. Previous knowledge is connected to a new knowledge, and they make connections to create or to build a network of knowledge. Here, experimenting with physical objects is a must, and the experimentation is not going to be the same in each stage of the development of a cognitive development. For example, in a sensory motor stage, the child is going to experiment with physical objects to learn about a certain in specific, or to learn in general about the environment. But in a concrete stage, learners are going to experiment in laboratories about science or some other fields. Constructivism is also applied in learning and teaching a second language, and here are two approaches that have been developed under the constructivist trend. The first one is the communicative language teaching, that says that learning a second language is an active process, and as I said before, learning in general is an active process that says everyone constructs their own learning at their own pace based on their own experiences. It focuses on using language for communication and says that language skills are learned through immersion, and teacher here is a facilitator, and it's in the classroom to solve certain questions and to create um, networks of interaction and building conversations among students. It's a learner-centered approach that is centered in the learner necessities and the learner experiences. Then we have the problem-based learning that presents and solves real-life problems, and learners work together to solve real problems while employing various resources and technologies, and they work together to identify and to complete certain tasks to achieve a solution, developing in this way a critical thinking. Teachers also foster critical thinking and design problems to be solved, and some activities that they can realize in a classroom are, for example, role playing, and language skills are also learned through immersion, and it's important to learn these skills through immersion, as it's better for this approach to learn through real life situations. Constructivism has been also applied in digital learning. Here, many studies and projects have been conducted in the line of online learning and show that some apps and games seem to be beneficial when learning a second language, as they can facilitate the construction of autonomous knowledge out of a classroom. For example, video games, simulation games present concrete goals and missions that need to be achieved, and through them, learners learn and practice basic language or develop other target skills. At the same time, the internet, some websites, and virtual learning environments provide autonomy for the learners that need to research and need to create their own pace when learning. This facilitates or fosters the individual critical thinking and construct their own learning. In conclusion, constructivism is a trend that has had a great impact in learning a second language, developing some approaches and being the foundation or the inspiration for digital learning. It supports individualization of learning and autonomy, and the learner develops awareness not only for learning, but for the language itself and for the intercultural aspect as well. Piaget has undoubtedly left a great mark in the psychology and pedagogy field, and probably many of the apps or resources that we use nowadays have been founded under the principles of a constructivist view, even when it is a relatively old approach. This was all for my presentation, and I hope you could have learned something from this. Thanks for your attention.